So in today's episode of For the Tech of It, we're going to take a look at a spin of the Ubuntu 22.04 LTS. Now I know that there are quite a few of you who are Ubuntu fans, but don't particularly care for the GNOME desktop, nor do you want to use one of the Ubuntu derivatives like Linux Mint or Zorin or whatever. So if you fall within that camp, then stay tuned because I'm going to show you my favorite desktop environment, that being the Cinnamon desktop. So here we are in the Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix desktop environment. This is running Ubuntu 22.04 LTS, and I've applied all the updates. So I'm going to cover a few topics today in this episode. One is resource utilization. We want to see how much memory the Cinnamon desktop is using. I'll show you how much drive space is being occupied by Cinnamon. This is running the same version of the kernel as Ubuntu 22.04 with GNOME. I think it's the 5.15 kernel, and we'll take a peek at that as well. Then I want to take you to the Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix website. There's some information there I want to share with you to help you better understand, what that community is doing with this particular spin of Ubuntu. After that, we're going to take a look at how Cinnamon handles workspaces. And I really like how Cinnamon handles workspaces better than GNOME. And we'll talk about that as well. We'll take a look at the Software Center. We'll also talk about the Snap packages because, this is 22.04 and things are based on Snap. And I want to share some of my thoughts with you there on that. We'll also install Flatpak support because I use a lot of Flatpaks. Then we'll wrap things up, and during the wrap-up, I will talk to you about some upcoming episodes that I'll be working on, and I want to get your thoughts and feedback on some of that. Okay, so let's start by taking a look at the resource utilization here for Ubuntu with the Cinnamon desktop. So I'll open up the terminal right quick, and I'll run two commands. See how much memory is being used. And I just booted up the OS. And we'll look at, if I can type, the version of the kernel. So we're using, just about a gig of RAM to start off with. So here it is, 1020. And in terms of the kernel, we're at the 515. .0-27 kernel, so same one that you'll find with Ubuntu 22.04 with the GNOME desktop. So as I said earlier, this is very much Ubuntu 22.04 underneath the hood. Now what's interesting, and I'll clear this, is that I can spell, NeoFetch is installed by default. Now I'm running this in a virtual machine, but it's really nice. One of the first things that I like to do is install NeoFetch, but it just so happens that it's part of the Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix install. So you'll see the config here for NeoFetch, and I think they also install HTOP by default. Yep, so there's HTOP. So two tools that I routinely install, HTOP and NeoFetch, right out of the box. Now there's something else that I normally install. Couple of things, and I'll show you here, and I'll do it from the terminal. One is the Microsoft TrueType fonts. So that's one. And the other thing that I like to install, other than NeoFetch and of course HTOP, I like to use the Breeze cursor theme. So let's do that. Breeze, I think it's cursor theme. We'll put the password. Did I type that right? Let's see. I missed the word install. All right, so we're going to get those installed. We'll acknowledge the EULA for the Microsoft fonts. let that go. And while that's happening, I'm going to open up the Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix website here. Now this is the new version of Firefox. It is a snap. So the first time you open a snap application, it takes a while for it to load up. So we'll go to the Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix website and let me check to see if the terminal is done. Not quite. So as you see here, the screenshot is still from Ubuntu 20.04. I just don't think the team had time to update all of this yet. But I downloaded this particular image from this website. And, reading here, it says, the Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix is a community-driven distro. It features the Linux Mint Cinnamon desktop with Ubuntu at the core, and I've been saying that. It is fast, and it's full of features, and it's the most traditionally modern desktop that you will ever love. And I really do enjoy using the Cinnamon desktop. So if you want to take a look at the Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix, this is the website. It's just ubuntucinnamon.org. So let's check here. Yep, it's all done. So now I'm going to go in and let's theme this up a bit. So I'm not into the current color scheme of the Cinnamon Remix. So we're going to change this up a bit. And we'll go into the system settings, go into themes. And currently the window borders are the Yaru Cinnamon Dark. Let's go into add remove because there's something I want to add here. This is what I normally do. I think I've already added it. So this is the Adapta Nocto theme, so it is active. And for the icons, I'm going to go with the Papyrus Dark. I prefer those. And the Adapta Nocto. Here we go. This is the one that I like using, this particular theme. And we'll choose this, and that will change the Cinnamon menu a bit. So this is the theme that I always use whenever I run the Cinnamon desktop, which is pretty much all the time. In terms of the mouse pointer, let's go to Breeze Snow. So this is the one I like. And let's go back into the settings, system settings right quick. We want to take a quick look at some of these. There are quite a few backgrounds that are included as a part of the Cinnamon desktop here for Ubuntu. This looks more like a Fedora one. Wow. I won't go through all of these, but there's a pretty wide selection. Yes, some Debian backgrounds here. And you can, of course, include your own. I think I'll stick with the Debian. You have different effects that you can apply for the desktop. Of course, your font selection. I've made a few changes here to make it a little bit easier for us to read it. Of course, we just went through the themes. There's accessibility options, larger text, screen reader, enabled desktop zoom and high contrast. Oh, account details, yes. Another thing I like about well, not this one, something, here it is, online accounts. Sorry about that. So Cinnamon supports these different cloud service type accounts. So if you have a Google account, Nextcloud, Microsoft, Flickr, Foursquare, Microsoft Exchange, Ubuntu single sign-on, let's see what this one offers here. IMAP and SMP, Enterprise login, Kerberos, you can enable those here. So I usually don't make too many modifications to my desktop interface. I usually go with the Adapta Nocto theme, and of course, as you see here, my Breeze cursor theme. I do use the Papyrus icons. I actually prefer those. You can also go in and customize the Cinnamon menu if we right-click on that. And we go into the menu. So you can use a custom label if you want, an icon, and you can choose a different icon. You can configure it to where, and I don't particularly use this, but when the mouse moves over it, you can actually have a delay in milliseconds. So without having to click on the menu, you just hover your mouse over and the menu opens. So if you like that feature, you can enable that there. You can also adjust the menu to a fixed height. So we can change this. Let's go up a bit, say to 650. So if you like a slightly taller menu, you can do that here. What else do we have in settings? Extensions. We'll download some. Let's see what we've got. So if you want transparent panel, you can install that extension. You can click on it, click plus, and you can see here, now the panel is transparent. We can remove that, put it back to normal. Okay, so that's pretty much all that I usually do. I'll usually add my own custom wallpaper to the background, but that's pretty much all that I like to do in terms of customizing my Linux desktop, especially when it comes to Cinnamon. Okay, now here's a feature that I really like about Cinnamon and the way it's implemented. This is how Cinnamon manages workspaces. So if you hold down the Control and Alt key on your keyboard and hit your up arrow, you'll notice that Cinnamon represents workspaces, the Ubuntu Cinnamon represents workspaces more in this horizontal manner, somewhat similar to the way GNOME does it. You can add workspaces just by clicking this plus sign. You can delete workspaces just by clicking on the little X here above it, right? But there's another way that, and I currently have two Nemo apps open up, one in Workspace 1 and one in Workspace 2. So you can toggle between them just by using your arrow keys and pressing enter, or you click on the one you want, and it takes you to that workspace. Something else you can do, and I'll open up the terminal, if you want to cycle between workspaces, and you can change these shortcut keys. It's Control Alt left arrow, that goes to Workspace 1, Workspace 2, 3, 4, or however many workspaces you happen to have open. All right. So in Workspace 1, let's look at this view again. I've got this Nemo app open. It's my file explorer, right? It was minimized. So now it's opened up. You can also change the way the workspaces are displayed. I'll hit escape. Let's go into the system settings and we'll go to workspaces under preferences. And you can enable a feature called display expo view as a grid. So if we do that, then we hit our Control Alt up arrow. This is how, essentially Cinnamon sets it up in a grid view. So if you were to add another, or another, or another, Cinnamon does a really good job at stacking them as a grid. And this is the view that I actually prefer right here. Right? So Workspace 1, Workspace 2, 3, and I had 4 actually open. All right? So how I like to use it, sometimes if I'm working on a project, and let me close out of the terminal in Workspace 2, and we'll go back to 1. I'm going to open up this Event Planner document. It's fine. I don't want to execute any macros here, and I'll just choose, I don't know, we'll just put something, college event. And we'll click OK. And LibreOffice Writer fills in the information. Now, you might also have, let's go back here, PowerPoint or a LibreOffice Impress presentation that you want to work on. Now, let's say I want to move this over to another workspace. All I have to do is go to the app, grab it, drag it to a workspace, and release it. Very similar to the way GNOME does it. I just prefer how it's laid out here, right? We can do the same thing here. I can pull Nemo down into Workspace 3. And then you can toggle and go between each one of them however you like. So you can cycle through them. keyboard shortcut or by using your mouse. And I use, these workspaces in this manner quite often. Let's say student calendar. We just opened up that in workspace 3, I believe. Yep. So I want to move that over to workspace 4, and we'll click on it there. So now I've got all 4 of my workspaces, and I can add more again just by clicking this plus symbol to add a new workspace and get rid of it if I want. And it's as simple as cycling through using the keyboard shortcuts. So I really like how Cinnamon manages workspaces. This, I think, is far better than using GNOME because, first off, your screen previews are much bigger. Whereas with GNOME, you have to scroll. If we go back to this view here right quick, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Go to Workspaces. I'll put it back to the default view. So with GNOME, you don't even get to see all 4. You'll get to see one and then part of the second one, and you have to use your, if you have a scroll wheel on your mouse, you have to use that to kind of scroll around, or you can use your keyboard. This way, I actually prefer this, the way Cinnamon does it, because I I prefer it in grid view, but as you can see, it's a lot more readable this way. So that's Workspace View in Ubuntu with the Cinnamon desktop. Okay, next up, let's go ahead and take a look at the Software Center. So we'll type Software, and I'll right-click and add it to the Favorite section. This, by the way, is a favorite section in Cinnamon. So you can either add it to the panel down here, add it to the desktop, or add it to Favorites. I'll just put it in Favorites. So here it is in Favorites. And for those of you who've seen Ubuntu 22.04's software center, this is pretty much the same thing, but running with the Cinnamon desktop. So it is snaps based. So pretty much practically everything you see here is a snap. Installing is as simple as clicking on the icon and clicking install, putting your password, and it'll install the snap package for you. So pretty straightforward. In fact, we'll do VLC. Put our password. Authenticate. And we'll let VLC install. And this is the latest stable. You also have the ability to run the latest candidates, beta, and the latest Edge versions if you want. Now, according to Ubuntu, the beauty of snaps is that you'll always have the latest version of the applications that are installed via snaps, because whenever updates are being applied to your system, those snap packages, if there are updates available to them, they will update as well. Now, depending on which camp you're in, and I'm kind of on the fence with some of this, there are some applications that I'm perfectly okay with them updating themselves. What happened here? Let me adjust my resolution. Not sure what happened here. Let's see. 1 second. Resolution just went haywire. Okay, I'll go back to display. Might be a little bug we just discovered, or it could be an issue with me running this in a virtual machine. So let's just chalk it up to that. Scroll down, hit apply. Keep configuration. Okay, so VLC is installed. It should be under sound and video, and there's VLC. All right, so as I was saying, there are a couple of different camps here with respect to snaps, and I'm kind of in between both of them. There are certain applications, for example, like LibreOffice, where I don't have a problem with LibreOffice being updated to the most recent version. That's what we have here, 7.3.2.2. But there are times when there are applications where users, including myself, I may not want those applications to be automatically updated to newer versions. So there are times when, in the past, where I've had updates applied to certain applications, and there was either a bug that was introduced, not no fault of Snaps, but just the new version had a bug introduced where the bug previously didn't exist, or a particular feature that was located in a particular area of the user interface, the developer happened to move it or just took it out completely. So it can be a little off-putting at times, depending on how you feel about it. So I'm on the fence. I'm okay with some being updated and others maybe not. So just keep that in mind. Snaps will keep your applications up to date to the most recent version. Oh, and there's one more thing too I want to raise everyone's attention to with respect to the Ubuntu Software Center and these Snap packages. So if you look at these categories, right? So create, work, play, develop, learn, socialize, what have you. Something I really don't like, and I think Canonical needs to look into this from a performance perspective, figure out how they can speed things up. But if you click on one of these categories, this is what you see, right? And granted, behind the scenes, what it's trying to do, it's hitting its, whatever the software mirror is, it's trying to hit that. And it's updating and downloading the metadata associated with the applications within this particular category. That's all well and good, but I can tell you in other distributions, Linux Mint, even with Fedora, Manjaro, and others, you don't have this type of delay. I mean, look at this. We're easily past 10 seconds here, and I'm still not seeing anything. And to a new user, this makes it seem as if either A, something's broken, or, something's wrong, or there's nothing here. And they'll end up, just going back and maybe coming back in, and hopefully this thing will be loaded, and it's still not loaded. So depending on, eventually it will load, right? Now it's completely blank. It's like, I'm not and this happens, I've tried this with the GNOME edition of Ubuntu. It's the same software center. So it's the same experience. And I've got great bandwidth. I've tried it on a couple of different computers as well, outside of a virtual machine environment, and the result is the same. So this is something that, and I saw this in version 20.04 of Ubuntu as well. But if you look at other distros and their software centers, you don't have this type of delay. I mean, it's almost immediate that this data shows up. So this is something that Ubuntu really needs to take a look at and fix, because it can be somewhat off-putting or even confusing, especially to a new user. So just my 2 cents on this. I mean, if you guys, I'm assuming you're probably going to see the same thing, but if you're yielding different results, then by all means, put that in the chat. If you find a better way to speed this up. And I've checked the mirrors that I'm using. I'm using local mirrors. I've changed mirrors. The results are the same no matter what. So this is, to me, this is unacceptable. Finally, I mean, look at create. I mean, it's still blank, for goodness sakes. I'll close out the software center and let's go back into it again. We'll bring it back up right quick. Let's do another quick test. I'll go back to create. So there's create. The data's in, but it was blank. You just saw it yourselves a few moments ago. So I'm not sure what's up with this. Here's work, play, and I've clicked on some of these a few moments ago. See, and it goes blank. So I don't know what the deal is with this, but it's something that the Ubuntu team needs to really look at. So I did want to show you this. I'd forgotten to show you this earlier, but yeah, this ain't good, folks. Okay, so let's look at adding Flatpak support. So one quick test, let me see if Flatpaks are installed because they're not installed by default with the Ubuntu GNOME. So let's see, I'm just going to say Flatpak, good. All right, so we're gonna install Flatpak. So before we do that, we can, either follow these instructions, which is simple enough, or we'll go to the flathub.org website and we'll do a quick setup. I want to read through this to see what they recommend for Ubuntu. So here's the Ubuntu symbol. So pretty much let me zoom in a bit here. So pretty much it's the same command that we have in the terminal. So we'll go ahead and run that. Let's do this. Password. All right, I'll let that run. I'm going to finish reading these instructions off of FlatHub. So once this command completes, okay, with older versions of Ubuntu, the PPA, so we're not going to worry about the PPA. Install the software Flatpak plugin. So this plugin is for the software app. It makes it possible to install apps without needing the command line. Okay, so we definitely want to run this. Copy it. See if it's finished. It is. So we'll paste that in. Run that. So yes. Then the next thing. So it says here, note the software app, which is the Ubuntu Software Center essentially they're referring to, is distributed as a snap since, of course, Ubuntu 20.04 and does not support graphical installation of Flatpaks. Installing the plugin will also install a deb version of software and result in two software apps being installed at the same time. So that's interesting. Let's see if it actually did that. We'll look for two of them. So all I see is one. So here's the Snap Store. Okay. Well, that's interesting. All right. So add the FlatHub repository. We definitely want to do that next. Then we'll restart the system. Okay, so we're going to follow these instructions. Paste this in. And I need sudo here. All right. And what I'll do, I will reboot the system and I'll pause the video. And once everything reboots, we'll pick up where we left off here and we'll check out and see. We'll try to we'll actually download a Flatpak and see if we can get it to install through the Ubuntu Software Center. Be right back. Okay, so we're back. I went on ahead and rebooted. And just as FlatHub stated, there are now two software managers. There's the one that we looked at earlier, which is this, and then there's the Snap Store. So let's open up both. Here's the one we looked at earlier in this episode. And I'm guessing this is the deb version that FlatHub talked about. So now there are two app stores. Okay. So let's go in and go into FlatHub. And I'm going to install, let's say, Shortwave, which is a pretty good little radio application for listening to internet radio. I'm going to click Install. It downloaded it. I think it should have put it in the Downloads folder. I'll minimize Firefox. I think if we right-click on it and say Open with Software Install, the software installer for Ubuntu should begin installing this application. So let's see how this goes. Yep, so you see here's the Flatpak. All right, so click Install. let the Flatpak install. While that's doing that, let me go back to this this Snap Store right quick. Take a look around. So I'm guessing this Snap Store okay, all snaps. This looks like the Snap Store that was in Ubuntu 20.04. It looks very similar to that one. Let me open up the one that was included here with Ubuntu 20. Okay, it's busy installing my Flatpak. But side by side, you can see there's some minor differences here. You got editor's choice. Okay, editor's choice. And you've got these categories here. That's interesting. And it's still installing shortwave. Okay, so well, you should still pretty much have the same library of software available to you. Okay, so shortwave is now installed. Let's see if it's here. Should be under sound, and let's see. Sometimes, yep. So apparently, and I've seen this with Flatpaks in the past with Ubuntu, you actually have to log out and back in for some of the Flatpak icons to show up in the menu. So this isn't unique to just Cinnamon, by the way. I've seen this happen in GNOME and XFCE. So let me log out right quick. So we'll do that here. And we'll log back in. And fingers crossed, this should fix it. We'll log back in. Let's see what happens. I'll close this. Go to the menu. There it is. So if we open up shortwave, it's a Flatpak. Yep, shortwave opens up just fine. So keep that in mind too, with respect to Flatpaks. And I haven't seen this happen consistently with all Flatpaks, but sometimes you will have, after you do a Flatpak install, and I haven't just seen this with Ubuntu, I've seen this with other distros as well. Sometimes in order to get the Flatpak application to show up in the menu, you have to actually log out and then log back in, and then it shows up. All right, so it looks like Flatpaks are working here. Okay, great, because I like using Flatpaks. All right, so that's installing Flatpak support in Ubuntu. Okay, so let's wrap up a few things here. We took a look at the resource utilization for Ubuntu with Cinnamon Desktop. We looked at the kernel version. We looked at essentially how to theme the Cinnamon Desktop. We went into workspaces. I really like how Cinnamon manages workspaces. We looked at the software center. We talked a little bit about snap packages. And we just installed Flatpak support. So we know that's, that feature works pretty well. And finally, I wanted to thank you for joining me today. If you haven't done so yet, please click that subscribe button, because I've got some other episodes I'm working on. Any day this coming week, we should be seeing the latest release of Fedora 36. So I'm really chomping at the bit to get my hands on that. And I'll be reviewing that as well. So stay tuned for that. I think it's due to be released, I think either the 25th or 26th of April. So stay tuned for that. And finally, I wanted to let you know that, on my website for thetechofit.net, And in fact, let me go there right quick. I was just looking at Fedora to see when the release is coming out. But if we go to the website, or the techofit.net, expand that out. I'll be posting this video. You'll see it on my homepage. These are some of my other more recent videos, but I have an entire webpage here with videos that I've done in the past. So definitely please check those out as well. It goes back, I think, a little over a year now that I've been doing these videos. The channel's still pretty new, and I'm really trying to grow it. So getting the word out for me, I think, would be very helpful, and I'd appreciate it if you do that. Also, I have some OS alternatives here. I'll be updating this site. Talk about Fedora, Ubuntu, Farron OS, Solus, several other Linux distributions. And if you click on these title links here, it takes you to YouTube videos that either I've done or others have done that talks about that particular distribution. So, for example, this is Manjaro, Mate. You can also click on the images themselves and it'll take you to that distribution's website where you can find more information on it as well as download and install it. Also, resources, and I've just updated this as well. I've got some pretty interesting websites here for you all to check out. Various categories, This Week in Google. These are some of the podcasts that I listen to, Destination Linux, Wall Street Journal, Tech News Briefing, so forth and so on. And of course, I have an About link which tells you essentially about For the Tech of It and the work that I'm doing here. So definitely check that out. And again, I was just really looking at the Fedora 36 website to see when the beta was, when the final release was coming out. And it's still beta right now, and it's still showing Fedora 35 here. All right, so as soon as this new version is released, I'll be downloading it, installing it, and checking it out. As Fedora is one of my daily drivers, I'm really keen on getting my hands on it. So stay tuned for that. And until next time, peace.